Welcome to Fast Politics, Stuart Stevens.
Thank you, Molly. I've got to use this as a shout out for your book. It's really extraordinary. It really is an amazing piece of writing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And, Stuart is actually a really incredible. You are a really beautiful writer, and you write tends not to be political writing, tends not to be so lyrical, and you write very lyrically. So I really appreciate that from you. And now we must talk about your madcap idea, which I love it so much. It's also just super interesting. So talk me through this idea.
The idea of nationalizing Starlink. And yeah, the deeply troubling thing about this is that I seem to agree with Steve Bannon, but I'm trying to get over that. Look, I mean this in all
So
seriousness. Never have we had one person so deeply embedded in two essential related national security industries, companies. Starlink and SpaceX are critical elements of American national security and of America's power in the world.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if I just woke up in the middle of the night and said, what if we had a guy who, has a well reported, very high level drug problem, unstable, obviously has mental issues, and he's the person that runs these companies? You'd probably say, that's really not a great idea. There is this thing called the Defense Procurement Act, which was
Right.
passed in 1950. It was actually updated in 1970 to specifically include anything related to space. And in earlier versions, the first was around World War One, they came up with it, gives the government, in times of national emergency, the power to direct or nationalize industries. And it's been used before, from the railways to mining and in various ways with steel companies. So Republicans say that we are in a national emergency. They say that we are at war. That's what they use to justify the use of the Alien Act, and they call it irregular warfare. So if I was a Democrat, though now that Steve Bannon has supported this idea, maybe you don't have to be a Democrat, um,
Mhm.
I would take it face value. Okay, great. Right. We're in a national emergency. We're at war. That gives the government the power to nationalize SpaceX and Starlink.
So, as a conservative, it's a pretty bold idea. I don't think it's wrong, but so the theory of the case here is that I think Tesla it doesn't is sort of a rounding error, but there are two companies that Elon Musk that has had that are owns that are where he is the largest stockholder. SpaceX is actually a private company that he has built through government subsidies and a lot of incentivizing with taxes,
Yep.
and they have made him the richest man in the world. And one is Starlink and one is SpaceX.
Yep.
And Starlink is, and again, this runs to the idea that you have a problem, which is you need SpaceX for satellites
Yes.
and also space exploration. You need Starlink for all of the stuff that's already
They're
in
very
space.
connected.
And
They're
yeah, the
very connected.
communication. And again, Trump tweeted yesterday about canceling a lot of Elon's contracts. But there is no other company that can do this. So we got here because government refused to regulate. I mean, explain to us
Well,
how we got here that we have one company that does these
yeah,
things.
it's interesting because wearing my conservative hat, you could make a good case that this goes to the efficiency of the marketplace. You had a guy who is extraordinarily gifted if deeply disturbed. So had this been set up by NASA from the beginning, you would have had security clearances that would have included drug testing,
Right.
and you wouldn't have had
Right.
Elon Musk anywhere near this thing. So that's positive. But now that it is what it is, one person should not be allowed to have this power, particularly someone who has such terrible judgment, is obviously in some sort of manic personal crisis. And we have a perfect example of his insertion of himself in world events when he refused in 2022,
Right. With
2026,
Ukraine.
yeah, 2022, to allow Ukraine. I mean, just picture this. Ukraine had set up the first use of one of their now sort of famous water drones, these water powered drones that carry explosives that they've used to somehow, for a country that doesn't have a navy, to defeat the Russian Navy. So they're 70 kilometers away from their target, which was the Moskva flagship. And Elon Musk turned off the Starlink and refused to turn it back on. That is extremely dangerous. And there is this weird affinity, would be the most positive way to put it, of this group of South Africans that he is part of. Sachs is another one. They have this soft spot for Russia, probably for no other reason. And it's an oligarch's paradise, and
Right.
they are oligarchs, or would be oligarchs.
Aspiring. Yeah.
And they have elections that are performative, not determinative, which they obviously like.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be done. I think if you had any sort of seriousness about national security, you would step back from this and say, regardless of how we got here, we're here. And we can't allow this to continue.
I think it's going to be hard to convince people to do that because I think the public markets aren't going to like it. I understand the need for it because Elon is very erratic and he's running these companies in a very erratic way. And there are certain things that are needed from Starlink and SpaceX that, his personal peccadillos are hurting, right? Like there are
Yeah.
people up in the space station who need to be okay. There are people in Alabama or rural Kentucky or, where they need to
Or
make sure the
Ukraine.
satellites, or Ukraine, where they need to make sure the satellites are working. So there is a need that is beyond what Elon's personal peccadillos are. But the worry, I think, a lot of us on both the left and the right, is that once you start taking over private companies, it's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, it's been used before. It's always been unpopular with those that are connected to the companies,
Right.
for understandable. Going back to when they nationalized a lot of use of the railroads, going into the U.S. entry into World War One. I think it's like everything in life; you have to balance the good.
Right.
And there's really no two companies that are as deeply involved in national security. This isn't a case of you're nationalizing Tesla to give Ford a break
Right.
or to help Toyota. And Tesla, which is really the source of most of his wealth, and of course, which is one of the reasons they've had this, extraordinary high technical fight, is Trump wants to cut the EV credits.
Right.
And until recently, the only money that Tesla made was from EV credits. They were basically an EV credit company that also made cars. You take that away, and the value, and Tesla's extraordinarily overvalued company.
Right. Yes, for sure.
It will go down. But that's fine. I mean, Tesla's not necessary to have for national security. I mean, all my neighbors in Santa Monica can make do. Brentwood will survive. But there ought to be responsible adults connected with the best interests of the United States government that are at this point running Starlink and running SpaceX.
Right.
Pay him a bunch of money.
Right. Buy it from him.
United States government has a lot of money. You don't have to just seize it. Pay him a lot
So
of money. That's fine.
so you feel like it's an eminent domain
Exactly
question.
like eminent domain. That's a very good. It's a very good example. And we use it, and it's controversial. And those that are eminently domained out usually don't like it.
Right.
But
Right.
I just think that you can't unsee what we've seen in the last 48 hours.
Right. This is not a person who should be in charge of national
Yeah.
security.
I mean, you could say, okay, here's a guy, he's jumping up and down behind the, President of the United States. You look at that footage in the Oval Office, and, there's not a teenager in America that would walk into their home in that kind of condition and not know that they're going to be busted by their parents. How deeply into drugs do you have to be that you can't restrain yourself the morning of knowing that you're going to have a meeting in the Oval Office that's going to be televised? If you can't kind of hold it together for that, that is a serious indication of a serious problem.
Right. I mean, we don't want to speculate, but there certainly has been reporting in the Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
about a box of pills and this and that.
Well, he's
I
also
want.
said that he uses ketamine,
Right. Right. Right.
and we can
Right.
now use Donald Trump as a source.
Right. Well, Donald Trump, the two of them did definitely get involved in a lot of pretty insane name calling. So right now, there are a lot of people who want Elon and Trump to sort of take it all down, right? They are de-accelerate, whatever, stop fighting. This is a bad situation for people like Mike Johnson. This is a bad situation for people like Anna Paulina Luna or any member of the House GOP who is got to choose between their richest benefactor and their political North Star. Do you think, and this is something already we're seeing this, do you think this bill could get crashed just by Elon? Should Democrats be pushing that, even if
I
Elon's
mean, I think
reason to
it's a
crash
ter-
the bill is something totally different than why Democrats want to crash it?
I think that what Democrats have to learn to do is to use whatever tools they have available and not to feel that like this is beneath me or that is beneath.
Right,
You can't allow yourself the luxury of pretending that the greater good is served by acting like a normal governing party.
right,
As Jonathan Last, I thought brilliantly pointed out, we don't need an opposition party now. We need a dissident movement. So this is a terrible bill for many reasons. So you didn't need Elon, but the degree to which Elon can be useful in this, I think
yeah,
they should grasp it and beat him over the head with it. And look, this is also this. We should not lose sight of the fact this is terrible for the country.
right.
Think
No,
about
no, it
it.
kicks
Today,
people off Medicaid.
Today's no, just this fight is terrible for
Oh,
the country. The bill is terrible too. But
yeah,
today's the anniversary of D-Day.
yeah,
So think about what America was doing then and what the leadership, the sacrifice, and the image that it secured for America's place in the world as a flawed but instrument of greater good.
right,
Compared to this fight between two deeply flawed, horrible human beings who are two of the most powerful people in the world. I mean, it's just how far we've fallen. And Republicans are to blame for this. They didn't have to tolerate this. And they've allowed it to happen.
So talk to me about what this looks like now. So Democrats really could, and I think they should think about trying to sink this thing with the help of Elon Musk, because Elon
Absolutely.
Musk's people want it gone. This bill, if it passes, will kick people off Medicaid. It will cut food stamps for poor kids. It will just do everything, and it will extend these ridiculous tax cuts. And it will also open the door to no tax on tips. How that will work, I have no idea. Talk about that.
Look, I think the Democrats should have a greater ambition than just stopping this bill. They should use what's happened with Musk as one of the instruments to undo and get all these Doge cronies out of government. I mean, just stop and think. The guy that we have seen in the last 24 hours, would you trust him to hire someone to paint your house?
No.
No. And what are these people like that he's hired? They try to hide, the big balls in these crowds. They're going to be weird. They're not going to have a sense of any patriotism. And they're dangerous.
Right.
We are at this moment. I mean, think about it. I think Chris Hayes made this very good point. Oh, this is great. You got one of these guys has all our personal information in his pocket, and the other has the nuclear codes.
Right.
Well, this is really great. So I think it just indicates the recklessness and carelessness and lack of any sense of responsibility that has driven this entire Doge effort. They should try to undo this.
Yeah. It's interesting. And in fact, there's really good reporting today from the Washington Post about how Doge has fired so many people, and there really is quite they're trying to rehire these people that they fired. And I do wonder if there is a question now, if you could, I think it would mean that you would need to appeal to John Thune. You would mean that you would need to get Trump back on board to try to stop sort of defenestrating the federal government. I'm not sure. Like, remember, part of why Doge was allowed to happen was because the Heritage Foundation really did want to unravel the federal government. So there were two different poles involved in that. Talk to that.
Yeah, I think also, yes, that's true, the Heritage Foundation, of course, but there is a hidden motive here of someone like Trump and someone like Musk. They really don't believe in democracy. They believe in autocracies and the sort of great man theory of history. So if you have a government that is working, that is functioning, they see that as a reduction of their own ability to be historic figures. This whole notion that goes back to George Washington, that the president is just holds the office temporarily, and he's a steward of something greater that goes back to the oath of allegiance is to the Constitution, not to a man. That is deeply alien to someone like Trump and someone like Musk. And everything is personal to them. So this is one of the reasons they're so drawn to Putin. And it is cruelty. It is ignorance. It is a complete inability to imagine how government can help others. But it also is a ploy to make the need for a strong man essential. I think the best fights you get in, not because you know you're going to win, but you get in because you have to fight. It's true of Ukraine. It's true of the Battle of Britain. That's the attitude Democrats should have. I mean, if Democrats take over the House, the first thing I would do is I would cut off all funding for the executive branch, every bit.
Yeah, such a good point.
You know,
Such a good point.
Don't play this game by different rules. Accept that this is the game that we're in, and use those rules. Don't be like we were in World War I when hesitant to establish intelligence because gentlemen don't read other gentlemen's mail. No.
Right. That was the actual sin of Bidenism, was bringing a stuffed animal to a knife fight, was refusing to meet these people where they were.
Yeah, I think that there's two ways to look at that. I think that's what you just said is absolutely true. I think also that Biden historically will have to plead guilty to having a greater expectation of what America could rise to than America chose to rise to.
That is really true. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Stuart Stevens.
Thank you, Ron.
You're so smart.